Dr. Louis Richardson, a master surgeon in his own right, almost top of his field in many ways, and is credited as being one of the best surgeons to ever be at Seton Hospital. He's working on a patient, and through no fault of his own, the patient dies on the table. The head nurse that is in the surgery with him looks at him and says, "Dr. Richardson, it's over. There's nothing else you can do to save this patient." Dr. Richardson says, "Okay, let's let the family know that the patient's dead." The head nurse says, "Do you want me to tell the family?" "No. It's my responsibility. He was under my care. I need to go tell the family." It's common practice for him to usually tell the family, but this loss is a little harder for him because this is his first loss after 20 consecutive successful surgeries with no fatalities. This was the 21st. He was hoping to get further before he lost another patient, but he did. As he went to inform the family of the loss, he thought to himself, who was this to this family? A brother, a loved one, a father, a grandfather? He would never know. He went to his office afterwards, sad about the loss. The chief of the hospital joins him in his office. Joel Truss looks at him and says, "You can't lose more. You lost this one." Richardson, knowing that he's had 20 successes before this, took it to heart. Couldn't stand they lost another patient. The chief hands him a strange book written in Latin, and he says, "Read this. See if there's something in here that can help us in any way. I don't think science is enough anymore." Leaves the office. Richardson starts looking through the book. He knows Latin. It's not like he's memorized it, but medicine is Latin. So there's a lot of cross there. He reads in a section called Reanimation. Fascinated by the idea of my chief, my boss, just handed me this book. Maybe there's something in here that I can do something with. Takes the book with him, goes down to the morgue, reads part of it. Person's chest expands as they reach out towards Richardson. Richardson screams, jumps back to the corner of the room, not knowing what to do. The body falls limp, just like it was a moment ago. No more breathing, nothing. Just stopped. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know what else to make of it. He went back to his office, and he ended up passing out in the office that night due to exhaustion, just because the idea of something like that just going through his head, he couldn't find the energy to drive himself home. The next morning, he had a triple bypass surgery he needed to do. He had his head nurse, Michaela Truss, there with him. The heart stopped. He didn't know what to do. He began chanting some of the words he found in the book, just chanting it over and over and over again. The heart kept beating with major problems. He was able to finish the surgery and send the patient to the ICU for monitoring for the rest of the day. And the patient ended up making a full recovery. Richardson didn't know what to do with that. He tried something new, something that the medical journals don't tell you about. And he succeeded at saving a life. He was so excited. He finished up the rest of his day, finished up the rest of his paperwork. He went home that night, and he saw his cat waiting there for him. Knight. He said, "Oh, Knight, I can't believe it. I didn't come home last night. Here's a can of wet food for tonight. Here's a can of wet food to make it up to you." Knight looked at him, eating its supper that's twice as big as it normally is, and he began petting his cat and finally pulled out his cell phone and checked his voicemail. Michaela, his head nurse, left him a voicemail saying, "Hey, I was hoping maybe tomorrow at work we can talk about what happened before. It definitely is a situation that bears completion." And before she could get any more words in, Knight headbutted his hand and he dropped the phone. And all he could hear the phone say after that was, "Message deleted." He looked at his cat and said, "Well, I guess I'll go there tomorrow and find out what you wanted to talk to me about." Next day at work, an emergency comes in. There's a shootout on northbound 101 heading into San Francisco, where two cars crashed into each other. One of the people that was sent to Seton Medical Center that wasn't in too critical condition that could get sent there. Joel tried to get as many people as he could sent there, but he wasn't able to get the call in time. But one of them did get sent there, Voss. That's all he goes on in his name. He actually whited out the rest of the name on his driver's license, making it almost invalid. When they were carrying Voss into the ER, he said to Voss, "So, looks like you got yourself into quite a bit of a mess. And I'm assuming a lot of it was your fault, by the way I hear it." Voss turned, spits at Richardson's glasses, gets a whole lot of spittle in his face. And Voss smiles and says, "Yeah, I'm a great shot even with no hands." Richardson stops, cleans off his glasses, goes and finds out what's going on with Voss. Voss has his whole arms shattered, and when he was crashing, his head went through the windshield and the whole dashboard collapsed into his front section. They had to use the jaws of life to get him out of there, and they're surprised more damage didn't happen to his vital organs. And so was Richardson, to be honest. He went in there, he did the best he could, he connected everything up as best as he could, but the problem was the nerve endings that went to his arms had severe damage and didn't look like he was going to be able to do too much to repair it. He continued on with the rest of his day after that. Michaela was very interested in Voss after all of this happened, so she went to check on him in his room after the surgery was over to make sure he was having a good recovery. She was surprised he was standing. He had police outside at the door, and he ended up jumping at her and tackling her, using both his arms in casts to wrap it around her neck. He got her into the hallway, and he screamed at the police, "You guys are gonna let me go, or else I'm gonna pop her head off, even with my arms like this." The police said, "Okay, stay calm. We don't want this to get violent." Michaela ends up tripping him, landing him on his back, bashing her elbow into his already broken ribs, and said, "I'm better at most things than you might think." And she ends up walking away as the police officers pick him up and take him back into the room. Richardson, hearing about this, tries to get to Michaela as quickly as he can and says, "Michaela, are you all right? I heard what happened with Voss." And she says, "Yeah, I'm fine." Richardson says, I got a voicemail from you, but my cat Knight deleted it before I could finish hearing the whole thing, so I wanted to know what you wanted to talk to me about." Michaela looks at him and goes, "Right. Your cat deleted the message. Is that like when your dog eats your homework?" And he's like, No, I'm serious. Here, look at the picture of my cat." He pulls out a picture of his cat, opening the door to the refrigerator so it can eat the food on the bottom shelf. And she's like, "Okay, fine. You've got a smart cat there. So maybe there is something to it. But yes, I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the last meeting that we were supposed to go to when you fell asleep in the on-call room." "Oh, yeah. I was wondering when you were going to bring that up." She's like, oh, you were wondering when I was going to bring it up. So, is this something you normally do with other nurses? Just not bringing it up? No. You're the only one that I was in the on-call with ever, and I don't do things like that. As he starts blushing and looks very, very shocked by the direction this conversation took. And he said, no, I actually wanted to know maybe if you want to go out to dinner Friday night and we can talk about it more fully then. Oh, Friday night. Yeah, we can squeeze you in. He smiles and says, all right, and walks away, finishes up his day. That Friday night, they end up meeting up for dinner. He takes her to one of his favorite restaurants, orders caviar and filet mignon for himself as an appetizer and as a main course, and was about to order the same thing for her, but she says, no. I've got myself. I like the king crab. While they're waiting for their food. So, is this something you normally do, hitting on nurses? He's like, no, I swear, you're the only, I've never, please don't do this to me. And she's like, okay. He jumps in and says, is picking up on doctors something you normally do? And she looks at him and says, Joel Truss is the head of the hospital, and him and I are in an open separation right now, and it's not looking very good. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. Is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, he's just kind of a racist, and I don't want to deal with it anymore. And lately he's been very pseudoscience-y on a lot of fronts, so I don't feel I can communicate with him normally like I used to. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, that kind of seems to match up with what I've heard lately. She's like, oh, well, so what's with all this? You seem to have a lot of very lavish things that you're used to and liking. And he goes, yeah, the filet mignon and caviar is kind of my go-to at this place. She's like, yeah, by the way, it's not that cheap either. He's like, well, no, but when you're a surgeon and you're the best surgeon at a hospital, you can kind of afford the finer things now and then. She goes, yeah, I also heard maybe a life of luxury isn't unfamiliar to you. Yeah, I kind of had well-off parents to take care of me and pay for my college, so it doesn't hurt. Yeah. Tell me about your wealthy parents. He looks down at the table, his glass of water. Well, there isn't much to tell. I had a wealthy family. They hired someone to take care of me, a nanny, when I was younger. She really raised me and took care of me. To be honest, when I was young, she caught lung cancer. And my family almost completely pushed her aside. I heard about it and kept staying on top of it as best I could. Being a younger person, I was about 10. She had the first surgery to take out the lung cancer to try to treat her, but they left some rags inside of her, and she actually ended up having more trouble breathing after the surgery than before. They went back in, they took out the rags, but the problem was the rags had contaminated blood on it, and it spread the lung cancer throughout the rest of her lungs. And that one surgeon's dumb mistake ended up costing her her life, when it didn't have to. Richardson was heartbroken and got up and left the table. Michaela, she quickly ran after him and gave him a big hug as he rested his head on her as he cried for a few minutes. They went back to the table. They served up the meal. You know, it takes a strong man to be willing to cry, especially on a first date. He says, yeah, strong. I guess so. Yeah, I'm really glad you opened up to me. He said, thanks. You know, could make a regular thing out of this, you and me. He goes, yeah, could. She goes, yeah, we really could. Why not every Friday we do this? He goes, yeah, that sounds good. Every Friday. She goes, I'll see you again next Friday. He smiles at her. He says, see you again tomorrow. We have work again. She goes, yeah, I guess you're right, we do. A few days go by. The hospital gets in worse and worse shape. Robertson looks like a rock star, succeeding at over 30 surgeries, even the worst of surgeries that look like they're going to go bad with the patient dying on the operating table. He succeeds. He finally gets his guts together to ask the whole staff at a big staff meeting, hey guys, let's try something. I have a prayer that we can all do together to see if we can make a big difference in this hospital and in the world. Let's try it together. They all stand together, they hold hands, and he recites something in Latin. The earth shakes when their prayer is over. Everything in the morgue ends up banging and rattling around. And from that point on, the world is never the same again.
Oh, hi, I'm Dr. Richardson. If you like what I did here today, please like and subscribe and become a member of the Karath Crew.